I know. All right.
All
TMI, man.
right, so just real quick, the market, been interesting past couple of days. Just a whole lot of back and forth on the AI stuff. Crypto been selling off. Gold looks like a quantum stock, but now all the gold and precious metals are selling off today. I wrote in the newsletter about that. I don't, I do think, you've got to have gold and precious metals as part of your portfolio, but just that parabolic move, I don't know that I'd necessarily, if I didn't own it, that I'd be a buyer today. I did also mention in the newsletter I'd be a buyer of crypto. Bitcoin opened up weak and is now ramping, quite a bit. So always good to nail some of that stuff. Besides that, market looking toppy, but no top yet. I know we our last podcast we had a bear on. He made a great case, but not seeing it yet. As I told my trader this morning, trade based on what you see, not based on what you think. You're looking at SPY. It looks like an uptrend, so that is what it is until it isn't. I know, Jeremy, if you've got anything to add.
Yeah, I was looking at SPY too. I mean, that continuation on that trend just keeps on cooking. And then one of my other favorite things to trade, since we have a biotech guest on, is LABU. It's like a 3x bull biotech sector. That thing has just been on an absolute tear this entire year.
Yeah, biotech is one. I mean, I've been telling people in the newsletter, AI in healthcare. So like, the Tempest AIs and then sometimes like, the DNA, RxRx, all that. I've missed this overall biotech move. It just tends to be one of those areas I don't typically pay a lot of attention to because it's, a lot of these companies are so reliant on like one drug and that's not my area of expertise, so I tend to stay away except when AI is involved. But good point. That's ramped.
All right. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce our guest. We got Andy Lee on here from Vincere Biosciences. He's in the kind of anti-aging biz, biotech, focusing on Parkinson's, mitochondria. He also has Muhammad Ali on his website, which is very cool. He's a big hero of mine. I guess Muhammad had Parkinson's. I used to have so much Muhammad Ali stuff. It's crazy. So I really appreciate that. Anyway, why don't you tell us what you guys are up to, how you're changing the world, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Pat and Matt. Good to talk to you, and Jeremy. So we are attacking the intersection of aging and disease, which I think is a real differentiator in that traditional medicine tends to look at one therapeutic area at a time, one disease at a time, and then try to figure out how to fix that. But if you look at aging as the biggest risk factor for most diseases, you got people over 50 account for 80% of cancers and 90% of cardiovascular disease and 95% of neurodegeneration. Pretty undeniable. We all know it. Like as you get older, you are on this trend toward decline, and we need to find some ways to address the root cause problems there. Matt, loved hearing you talk about AI as being the key piece. That was our key thesis 10 years ago. My background is software engineering, and our whole idea was that you can combine AI with human data to get superhuman results. And that is how we developed our pipeline of druggable, but as of yet undrugged targets. And we're now staged to go into the clinic next year with our first mechanism that rejuvenates mitochondria. We know that this should be a disease modifier for Parkinson's, stops the progression of Parkinson's, but we also see efficacy in cardiovascular and kidney indications, also both very energetically demanding tissues.
Right. So
Very cool.
I have a ninth grade son, right? And like he took eighth grade science last year, which I obviously forgot. And I learned a lot about the mitochondria. Like, why do the mitochondria? What does that do? And why is that so special? And all that.
Everybody, the thing everybody remembers from high school biology, right? The powerhouse of the cell, right?
Yep.
They
Right.
provide the
Big and
energy
mighty.
to the system. Yeah, but they're actually like highly dynamic power plants. These things are being shuttled all over the cell to provide energy localized where you need it. And like any power plant, over time they become damaged and they start to leak toxins. And when those toxins go into the stream, you've got reactive oxygen species that can cause DNA damage and protein misfolding. And when they get really damaged, they explode. And that can cause an autoimmune response because these mitochondria, if you go way back in history, these were originally bacteria, right? So these are bacteria that somehow invaded the cells and became symbiotic to have this like co-living where mitochondria provide the energy and the cell provides the environment and extra proteins and other things. And so, but the immune system still sees those mitochondrial DNA as a foreign invasion that can trigger an immune response. So this is part of what happens as people get older is the ability to clean up the damaged mitochondria goes down. And when that happens, you get more of these things hanging around, you get more oxidative stress, you get more inflammation. And so that's where we've really focused on clearing those out more quickly, which can put you back into a youthful, healthy state.
Right.
So let me ask you this. As you noted, I pointed out AI in healthcare, and that's really because I saw when Jensen Huang and Mark Andreessen were both asked where they thought AI was going to have the biggest impact, they both said healthcare. And then you see like articles from time to time, like at some point, your iPhone will listen to your breathing and will warn you, if you've got a problem. Stuff like that just seems like such a game changer. The question, because we're an investment podcast, is, what are the companies that are going to dominate that? Obviously, you've got, the Mag 7 positioned, Apple has the iPhone, Google's got their phone, Nvidia's got the chips, all of that stuff. I'm just curious if you have a sense, is this, purely just another area the Mag 7's going to dominate, or, are there a whole bunch of up and coming, companies that are either going to become the next, mega companies or are just going to be bought out at a nice premium? I mean, do you have a sense on any of that?
Yeah, it's a fantastic question. And, you know, it's such a dynamic system where things are changing. And you do have these questions of like in the biotech world, that you often have a relay race of development where early private companies are taking that idea to IND stage, and then they're getting acquired by the big pharmas to run the clinical trials. And so if that path happens, then public stage investors often don't have any opportunity to play in the upside in these because they're just taking off. And there have been waves of time where public markets become a part of that story, where you get to that phase one safety trial, then you raise public capital and you get through your human proof of concept before you get acquired. And that gives two options, right? Then public investors might be able to catch that upside of showing human proof of concept, but also have that potential that maybe that company gets another second or third asset into the pipeline to stick around as a private or stick around as an independent company. I think all of the big tech companies are playing in the space. They're taking different approaches, and I think a lot of them seem to be looking at the healthcare side of things almost more as philanthropy and public good than real balance sheet drivers. You see like Meta and Zuckerberg is putting all his healthcare investment through the Chan Zuckerberg Initiative and mainly funding academic collaborations. Jensen's given open source tools away to everybody, and maybe starting to do some dabbling internally, but more so seems to want to enable the other people to build again, so that they buy the chips that everything runs on. And then you got really not many players, particularly in the longevity space, which is early, small, and just starting to take off. There are only a couple of public names that you could even think about. Unity, BioAge, a couple of that do that. Big pharmas are all starting to play there as well to see if they can expand their pipelines. But then you're diluted into the whole business that they've got, and any upside of tapping this might actually not be a big home run for the investor.
All right, I'm going to jump in here, right? Matt, pull up this chart, BAYRY. And sorry, guys, about the charts. Matt's having a problem with his real charts, so we have to use these, whatever these charts are, charts with like ads on them. So this is bear, right? I mean, stock's up like 60% year to date, so you can't say it's not going to move because it's obviously moved. They have like two, I think drugs in your side. They have this one drug called like, I don't even want to say it, but it's allogenic dopaminergic precursor implanted into the putamen. Do you know what that means? Did I say that right? What do you think of that?
So
one?
This would be for Parkinson's. It's another approach at restoring dopamine levels. So this would be a symptomatic treatment, maybe something that is more stable and longer lasting than like the levodopa carbidopa combination that most patients are taking, which has been the standard of care for Parkinson's since the 60s.
Yeah, I mean, the current thing is basically to make people feel better, right? You're not really treating the disease or whatever the words are. You guys are going right after the sucker and the mitochondria, right?
Exactly. That's where our approach is, actually aims to stop the degeneration and let the brain start to heal again. Whereas even that approach that Bear's working on, it's another symptomatic approach, maybe longer lived, maybe better tolerated. If it helps patients, it helps patients, but it's not likely to actually stop the disease.
I'm going to put you out on the limb here, right? Like RFK says all this stuff. It's like people are being slammed all these drugs for like all these innocuous reasons. Is that a realistic statement? You just said something that made me think that,
Yeah, I really don't think so. It's coming from the outside. I was a software engineer who went through government and fintech before coming into this industry about 10 years ago. And, I've not met people that are here for the money. There are a lot easier ways to make money than making and selling drugs, right? This is a hard business, and people are here because they want to make people feel better. I'm a little disappointed by some of the current conversation around pharma being the big evil money grubbers. I think a lot of our real problem in this industry in the United States is more around the insurance companies and the PBM middlemen in the pharmacy systems. There are a lot of layers of administration and cost that are outside of somebody spends $2 billion inventing a drug and they've only got 9 years to recoup their investment. Like, these companies are not getting rich off of these. They're basically breaking even and then recycling that back into inventing the next generation of drugs.
Yeah.
Right, which makes it more like philanthropy.
So I'm going to say one more thing, Matt. So Bayer, again, has another drug. This is for gene therapy neuroprotection, right? Delivers the GDNF gene directly to the putamen. Same kind of thing, though. This is like a dopamine type thing, correct?
This one's different. This is a growth factor that GDNF and BDNF have been, they've done really interesting things in animal models for decades, but groups have had trouble getting them into the brain and getting effective molecules that can do this. So, doing a gene therapy delivered directly into the brain, it's invasive. It's not something everybody's going to want to do unless you really need to. Because you're talking about drilling a hole in the skull and injecting these gene therapies into the brain there.
That's how it works.
But it's one of those.
I think I'd pass on that then, man. I don't want someone drilling in my brain.
If it's a one and done treatment, that then gives you these growth factors that cause your brain to regenerate neurons, like maybe it's worth it, especially if that's one where, like, if you already have the disease, if this can trigger neurogeneration, like, it might actually cause you to get better, which is,
I was
yeah,
hoping.
there's some interesting promise there.
No. Okay. Anything, Matt? Because I can keep going all day. I got a whole slip.
Yeah, no. So a few things. So back to AI, because again, I think AI is a game changer in a lot of different areas. One thing that concerns me, though, when it comes to the healthcare side is hallucinations, and when the AI was trained. For example, I up until this week was undefeated in my fantasy team. Asked AI, should I start Woody Marks over Ramondre Stevenson? And it thought Woody Marks was still in college, and told me no. I mean, luckily I didn't, and I still lost. But it strikes me something like healthcare. There can be outdated information, but also, there's a lot of disagreement, out there. I mean, you just saw it where the administration came out and said Tylenol causes autism, in pregnant women, and then you've got a bunch of people saying it doesn't, and, the vaccines, all of that stuff, which I guess we don't go into because then we get dropped off of YouTube. But
Yeah.
there's certainly,
Is that how it works?
there are a lot of areas in healthcare where there's not a lot of agreement. Any sense of how AI is going to be able to navigate that?
Yeah, these are big challenges. Yeah, it's a really good question. And this is one of the challenges in medical research and science in general is there is a lot of uncertainty. The whole point of science is to answer the unknown questions and to generate new questions off of that. Every time you get a new piece of data, it generates a new series of questions because now you've got a new glimpse of knowledge, but now what else don't you know? And so, when you look at the published manuscripts, even, go back 20 years to everything manual, and humans are writing papers and humans are reading papers and then trying to replicate those published studies in their own lab. Most studies don't replicate it. We've had a bunch of things where someone gets one set of data comes through. Maybe they had some magical conditions that worked in their lab that nobody else can repeat. Maybe they faked the data. Maybe there was, whatever conditions that just haven't, people really struggle to repeat. And so this was one of the things when we built our original AI system about 10 years ago was filtering that data. That was the first key part is you somehow have to put quality control filters. So a very simple example is if two different laboratories, independent laboratories, have published the same scientific fact, call it a fact, then you might have some better confidence that that is true. If they used orthogonal methods to show that, if they used two different methods and they both found the same result, then you can have really good confidence that, okay, that's something that we can now believe and build on for future science. And so a lot of what we did, and what I think is getting easier with modern AI, is to filter your knowledge graph to just have pieces that are validated across those multiple groups, or at least to weight the confidence in those pieces. So you can say this is still a hypothesis that somebody has just put out. It's an idea nobody's ever tested. This is something that one person has shown some evidence that, yes, it probably is good. This is something that multiple labs have shown over and over, and we know that that is true, right? And so then you can build your models around that strength of evidence, and that allows you to make better predictions where you're going to have less hallucinations, you're going to have less red herrings that you're chasing down the road. Because this is this gets like really expensive, right? This is part of that $2 billion estimate of people developing new drugs is paying for the cost of failures in that system. So if we can have less failures and uh, and fail earlier, then we can be much more efficient to develop things from that early stage onto actually providing value in the clinic.
So you've developed like 1,000 molecules based on AI, right? How does that? I mean, how does that fit in here? Like we can like how does that work? How can you make so many? That's obviously seems like a ton, no? Or is that not a ton?
Yeah, it's been fairly. We've been very efficient, and some of that is AI driven. Some of that is just good business. But we've invested about $12 million of investor capital, and almost $10 million of grants on top of that. So we do a blend of like non-dilutive and dilutive funding, and then with that we're now coming up on about $800 million in near-term transaction value of licensing out molecules. We just licensed our skincare molecule earlier this year. We're talking to people about licensing a Parkinson's molecule as that goes into the clinic next year. We've got a cardiorenal molecule that's optimized and ready to go forward for indications in that space. And this is it. It's all data driven at the beginning. Let's take human data because animal data is like kind of irrelevant to human disease, I believe, and then use AI to find the signal from within the noise, narrow in on for a given disease state or a goal, find the biology you want to change, how you take from a disrupted system to an optimized system, look at what proteins are within that, what are the entities in that biological system, and find which ones are maybe druggable, but as of yet undrugged. And now you can find opportunities to make new drugs that can be truly first in class, new mechanisms that will very efficiently go through medicinal chemistry and optimization. Even with that, it still took us, 3 years from having our first patent filed to having a candidate molecule that we were ready to take into the clinic. And, it's still a long, slow, hard road, but there are definitely ways that you can optimize and improve the outcomes along the way.
Let's talk about longevity because we're all old here, so that's something near and dear to my heart. Yeah, I read somewhere or heard somewhere that, so I'm 56, Pat's 60. If we can stay around another 10 years.
And in my case, it's short-evity, not longevity,
Yeah.
What?
If I make it, I don't, never mind. Bad joke. Watch the podcast. You'll catch up what I said.
Pat had a senior moment there. So I heard somewhere if we can stick around for another 10 years, medical science will be at a place where, we're going to be around for a lot longer than we would have normally thought. Do you think there's some truth to that?
I do. One of the first books that got me really hooked on the longevity space once we started looking, beyond Parkinson's was Ray Kurzweil's book, How to Live Long Enough to Live Forever. Yeah, I think he's got the right approach at the beginning of, we know today that sleep, diet, and exercise can buy you an extra 20% of lifespan. It's the difference between dying at 80 and dying at 100. And those 20 years might be a window of opportunity for really cool things to happen. We've got now several new mechanisms that are being exploited in the drug space that are coming through. One of the most exciting is cellular reprogramming. Where you can take an old cell and turn it back to a young cell. You might have heard of pluripotent stem cells. And there are several groups that are now trying to make medicines that can do these. Essentially, there are 4 transcription factors that you can turn on, and it would take an old cell back to a young cell, and then you can turn it into whatever kind of cell you want, which is pretty exciting on a couple of spaces. One, it shows you that rejuvenating an old cell is possible, right? Which we all knew anyway, right? In reproduction, you take an old sperm and egg and you end up with a young baby. So like clearly the biology is there somewhere in our system that you
Can
can
we
take
talk
old
about that
and turn it
online?
Yeah.
Yeah, just
Yeah.
not the delivery mechanism.
Right. Yeah. We'll stay away from that. Leave the gory details out. But the next thing is cloning. I think people are looking at you can take that process and you can grow your own replacement parts, and that's
Right.
actually pretty close now. Where like you can take a skin sample from yourself and grow a liver, so that when you drink too much and kill your liver, you can just like pop a new one off the shelf, and it's actually your liver, so you don't have rejection problems, you don't have other like issues. It's right, and you can take that to the extreme where you can see if we can already grow, you know, liver, kidney, heart tissues, can we just start to regrow all the replacement parts?
Right.
So do you have any sense then of what forgetting about the whole merging humans with robots, which is a whole
Right.
other potential issue, but keeping humans human, do you have any sense of where life expectancies may be, say 10 years from now?
Please, come on, let's say it.
Well, right now the theoretical maximum is 120 years. That's what everybody, the most we've seen, and what kind of people are seeing is the maximal human lifespan. And what we're seeing happen right now is the shifting of the curve of aging, where you might be very, very healthy up until 110, 120, and then everything falls off, right? If we can just delay illnesses, which we've seen over the past 100 years. Median lifespan was like 40, 150 years ago, and now it's 80, and we just keep improving that. A lot of the low-hanging fruit there are gone. That gets into, can we go beyond that? And there's precedent. Bowhead whales live for 200 years, so there are mammals that live longer than we do. You know, lobsters are theoretically immortal. They don't actually age with time. They just
Right.
keep going. So
Theoretically immortal unless they're in Maine and
Right. Right.
Yeah, put it on a plate.
you,
Like
you always got to
alligators
watch
live
out for the
forever
bear,
too, right?
right? Yeah, I mean it's yeah, we can, if we stop natural biological decline, you're still got to watch out for the bear, right?
Quality of life has to fit into that equation too.
well, yeah, that's the other question. So, for example, 5, 6 years ago or so, my mom died of cancer.
I didn't know that. Sorry, man.
Somewhere near the end, they told her, hey, we can't cure this, but we have drugs that you could be on. It'll mask the symptoms somewhat. Cancer won't kill you. Your quality of life is going to suck, but it may give you 2 or 3 more years. And she was just like, no, forget it. 2 or 3 more years of this, not worth it. I mean, my father died of cancer like 25 years ago. He didn't have that option. So at least it was cool. She had that option. It still sounded like a sucky option, though. So, are we also expecting quality of life with this longevity?
We have to. If you survey people to see how long they want to live, most people will give you a relatively young number. Like you might get a lot of 100 years is like the most that they'd want, even if they could be healthy, or you get like, you know, but we have to improve health span along the way, because I think everybody agrees, like nobody wants to be, 95 years old for 20 years. That just doesn't sound fun. Like, but if we can be, 50, 60, 30, that would be great. If I could be 30 indefinitely, I'd go back and do that. I think there's got to be. It seems like the repair and replacement is the path, I think, right? If you think about any system that degrades and falls apart with time,
Right.
we're going to keep accumulating damage. And if you can fix that damage, whether it's through like just repair replacement, you should be able to keep the biological system going. Then you get into interesting philosophical questions of if people are going to live to, 150 or 200, and do they still retire at 50?
Well,
Do they?
and that's yeah. I mean, we're thinking alike here because I mean we're financial guys, so the old kind of paradigm is retire at 65, put your money in income producing stuff. You've got Social Security, you've got whatever interest and dividends, and you're dead at like 80. No big deal. Now. I mean, let's say I retire in 10 years at, 66. I could live another 80 years. That, all sorts of financial stuff kind of comes to mind. Then the philosophical stuff of, I run a company. Am I hiring 140-year-olds?
Right.
And
If they've got the wisdom.
Leaving, am I bringing on new employees? What happens to kids out of college? So yeah, I mean, there's some mind blowing stuff there.
Yeah, it's very interesting. If you think about some of those financial planning processes, the way we looked at things previously would have to shift. And in some ways, I think the economy might be already front running this. Like you see crypto and influencers and other ways that like kids today are saying like, I don't want to buy a house and work toward a 401k plan. I can make 10x my money in 2 years. And like maybe people are building portfolios that can
Good
grow so
analysis.
fast.
It's kind of fresh too.
Right?
Yeah, makes sense actually. Yeah. Well.
If you think about like the upside of the time horizon, maybe everybody becomes independently wealthy before retirement age, and so work is no longer such a driver of needing to exist. You're not waiting for your money to run out because your money's growing faster than you'll ever spend it.
So Andy, you're in Boston, right? Go ahead, Matt. Sorry.
I'm dubious about that. I don't. I think that you don't kind of repeal the law that most people tend to do mediocre with their money, and unfortunately I think that's going to continue. So you sort of wonder, you look at things like Social Security, what happens if the people who are retiring at 65 and dying at 80 retire at 65 and die at 160? But then again, the flip side is, what happens if more people are in the workforce longer, paying into the system? So, that'll be interesting to see how that kind of works out. I mean, I think, all of retirement planning is going to need to change. We'll need to come up with new paradigms. I also wouldn't want to be, I wouldn't want to be betting against the life insurance companies because, all of a sudden, they're going to be making money hand over fist when people aren't dying. That could be an investment.
Good call.
You want to look at.
I hadn't thought about that angle. That's actually an interesting edge.
Another good one. That's why we love Matt, man. He has all these little side things he comes up with. It's like amazing. It's like it never ends, by the way.
There's always an investment angle somewhere.
It's endless.
And, and if all the life expectancy tables turn out to be wrong, wrong on the longs, they're too short, the insurance companies are going to make out like bandits.
Wow.
That's very interesting.
That was brilliant, man.
The other thing, too, though, if you're not only able to expand, but also quality of life. So if you can get rid of the Parkinson's, the dementia, the hips breaking, all of that stuff, on the one hand, you think, oh my God, long-term care insurance is going to blow up. But on the other hand, but if I don't
not if we fix it. Yeah.
I don't need long-term care. So that'll be interesting as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's got to be the thing. If people are still getting sick, we better hope they die soon, right? If we can keep people healthy and active, where they at least have the choice of contributing productively to society, then we can have them, live long.
Is this dystopian stuff? Is that the right adjective, man? Because it feels that's
I mean,
the right
I mean,
it's
adjective.
going to bring up
it's going to
potentially some
change.
psychological
Right.
issues. I mean,
Yeah.
if people are living to if life expectancy doubles, that is going to change a lot of stuff. And that's going to bring up a lot of issues in a lot of different areas. The investment side, but, also the philosophical side.
So the analysis on this is actually pretty optimistic. There's been a few studies done of what the economic impact will be if longevity is pushed out like that, and it's trillions of dollars of positive economic impact when you think about the GDP effect of people living longer, people later in life typically having are bigger spenders. They've got their money coming in. Whether you've got healthcare costs that are keeping them active and healthy, which they're going to pay something for the right to continue to live, or continuing to be in the workforce longer, or whatever the effects of more people later in life should be more spending, right? And we have to fuel that, but that's what growth is all about, right? It's gaining and spending more, and we see everything accelerating. So we're in this change where the way we work is shifting, the kind of work we're doing is shifting, what we can do with it is shifting, but
Right.
humans are still we're curious, creative folks, right? We're going to find something interesting to do with our time that will improve life and make the world better, whether it's amazing arts or or new medicines or colonizing Mars, right?
One other issue around this that could be massive for society is, let's say we've got these advances. How much is it going to cost? Who's going to be eligible? And how hard is it going to be? So, for example, you've got, guys like Brian Johnson, Dave Asprey, who are spending millions of dollars trying to live until like 120. And you see what this guy Brian Johnson does, and you're just like, it's not worth it to go
Right.
through. I mean, I don't know if you've seen this guy's routine, but it's just that's not interesting to me at all. I'd rather die at 80 than live another 40 years the way this guy lives and eat what this guy eats. But they're also spending millions of dollars to do this. And, this guy's got a team of doctors living in his house. So, the average guy obviously can't. So I think that's going to be interesting, especially the cost issue of, maybe, I can afford it, but you can't. So I'm going to live to 160 and be healthy the whole time. And you're going to die at 80, but have an awful last 10 years. That's going to create some issues.
But this is the way all innovation works, right? If you go back 50 years ago, only governments and major institutions had supercomputers that could do, AI and prediction, and even that was really rudimentary. And then, Jensen comes along and says, "Hey, let's repurpose, video game equipment for general purpose computing," and all of a sudden you get interesting things like Bitcoin and
Right.
AI that can come out into the world. And I think you'll see the same thing here, where we're going to get more and more precise measurements of what's going on in your body. That's one aspect of healthcare that's really interesting right now. Measuring every angle of your biology, your inflammation, your neurodegeneration, your energy processes. Right now you have to get a blood test done, and you've got some nice clinics coming on, Fountain Health and others, that are trying to do bespoke services to treat that. It's very expensive, but we'll get to a point where there will be an at-home blood test, or maybe even like a continuous glucose monitor that measures the 1,000 things that matter for you to know what your biology is doing. And then you can choose to take action on that, whether it's, you're supposed to stop drinking, you're supposed to eat less sugar, you're supposed to, fast for 16 hours a day or for 8 hours a day, depending on your personal biology. So I think those will continue to get like exponentially better over the next decade. Then you've got how do you modulate that biology, which right now is pretty rudimentary. But like if you look at the entire scope of FDA approved drugs, act on about 600 mechanisms. Inside the cell, you've got these, genetically encoded proteins that are all making up the system. There are about 25,000 proteins that are encoded by your DNA that make up the biological system. All of human history of drugs act on 600 of them.
Right.
That scope of undrugged biology is huge, right? So yeah, so I think there's so much room to play that we're going to then, as we know what's disrupted in people, we'll start to make drugs that can fix those things because you have to measure it to improve it. Both sides are improving at the same time. We personally are making new tools. Yeah.
All this, like, let's say you were able to monitor 1,000 things that go wrong with you via some magical glucose machine, right? That's got to be pretty bearish for like your regular doctor internist guy, right? I mean, you really don't need that dude anymore, yeah?
Yeah, no, I think the way we interact with medical professionals is going to change as well. And we're already seeing it. Like, when's the last time you went into a doctor and you didn't ask ChatGPT what your test results meant before they got to explain them to you, right? We're already doing this, and that's going to continue. But at the same time, just like you got your, hallucinations of players still being in college when they're actually on the field, like you've got those problems. The only way you get around that is by having experts who have lived and breathed this for decades and really know it in and out, who are also really plugged in with the AI so they can like vet the results and see like, yes, this is right, that's not right.
I'm sure that's a real job in the future, actually, it sounds like.
Well, and one potential ramification here, like right now we have a medical system where, you go see your doctor, he probably doesn't know who the heck you are. He spends 5 minutes with you because he's got 500 other patients. You could foresee a scenario where AI takes care of, like, hey, should I go to the doctor? Should I not? Well, oh no, everything looks normal. I probably just ate something. No big deal. Where really the only people going into the office are the ones who really have to go, which means your doctor spends more time, knows who you are. I mean, could be interesting.
So who do you think builds and pays for that? Yeah, go ahead, Pat.
Let me switch gears, right? Because I have we have 18 minutes left in theory. I got 19 minutes of things to ask you. All right. So first of all, I'm going to pay you a huge compliment. You have a Jeff Bezos vibe. Like I feel like I'm talking to Jeff Bezos a little bit. That's a huge compliment.
Right.
And secondly, Matt's also from Boston, so he's also a Boston guy. But anyway, so we're here because we're the H.E.A.T podcast, H-E.A.T, right? That stands for hedges, edges, asymmetric risk, and themes, right? So I have this little thing I do on ChatGPT. It's me, ChatGPT. It's called my H.E.A.T. It's a H.E.A.T thing. It gives me I put in stocks and it kind of pitches it back in like the H.E.A.T format. So I asked a little bit about like
you know that it really isn't the H.E.A.T format. I mean, I let you kind of go with this stuff because I know you're interested. But
okay, all right. So well, you just shut me down. But having said all that, it talks about like barriers to entry, which would be an edge, right? So it says that it takes a lot of patient capital to be in this biz. Then we talk about edges, bet on platform companies, not one-trick ponies, focus on regulatory milestones, themes, longevity, healthy aging, age-related diseases, cellular repair, et cetera, et cetera. I don't know what I'm really truly getting at here, but, what are your thoughts on anything like that?
The rest of us.
Right, I know, because I think I lost my notes here somewhere. I had another question. Oh, yeah. No, here it is. I dropped it. My bad. Sorry, I dropped it. So So it's just okay. So let's start from the beginning. Barriers to entry. These firms require deep science and patient capital. So that's an edge, right? We talk about A stands for asymmetric risk. Anti-aging drugs are 100 billion TAM if just one or two interventions work. So they can obviously go up a ton. Most stocks in the space have less than $2 billion market caps. So that means they could go up a ton. So themes. This is what I was getting to. So what is senolytics? This is the longevity theme. What is that?
Yeah, so senolytics are a class of drugs that remove senescent cells. And senescent cells are talked about as the zombie cells. So when your cells typically go through this life cycle of replicating and dying and getting cleared away, when cells become normal at the end, you might have two different paths they can take. One is they become senescent, where they don't die, but they also no longer function correctly. And those hang around and they start to cause problems that can lead to fibrosis and scarring and dysfunction and growth of your heart and other, your tissues start to dysregulate. The other aberrant thing that can happen at the end is proliferation, where some of your cells decide they're going to just start turning over really fast, and then you get cancer, right? So those are kind of the two unnatural end states of cellular replication.
So that's like a real
for a
meta theme,
while,
would you say? Yeah.
It is. It's one that's been around for, it's one of the things that has been known to accumulate with age, that for a long time people thought, okay, if you can clear out the senescent cells, you can rejuvenate the tissue. And there have been a few approaches of molecules that could do that. They effectively cleared the senescent cells, and they didn't magically induce health. So I think I'm not convinced that alone is a clear strategy to rejuvenate health.
Okay.
And I think you can look back at history of.
We'll rank that one a 5. Let me go to the next one. Okay. I want to get through these. All right.
Cool. You got a few. All right, let's go.
NAD plus boosters.
That one's interesting. That's one of the few that I actually take myself. There are a variety of them. So NAD is one of the things that mitochondria flow through the system to make energy. And so as people get older, there's lower levels of NAD plus in the cell, less to feed the mitochondria, you get less energy. That could be part of why mitochondria are less efficient. So there are two key approaches that are out there right now, nicotinamide riboside and nicotinamide mononucleoside. And the NR, the first one, you can get as a supplement. There are a few providers that have them. The second one, there are a few groups that have got patents around that they're trying to run clinical trials on that is harder to get, but they both kind of do the same thing. And if you actually zoom back out, niacin is another precursor to this. And so like people have been taking niacin as a supplement for a long time, and these are just getting closer to that NAD plus, where you get less like flush response and other problems that like niacin itself has. Maybe get more bioavailability, more potency.
So if you're taking it, you were giving it a 10. All right. So let's go to the next one.
Yeah.
Gene therapies, right? That's a broad thing.
Yeah, gene therapies are interesting, and it's very broad. The as a technology, fantastic. The idea that we can go in and edit and fix genetic problems, whether you're born with a mutation or if you get a mutation, comes on later in life. If you can fix those genes, or even if there are helpful genes, you might be able to knock those in. So yeah, I think it's interesting. The challenge there is which gene therapy, and they are kind of a point of no return in some cases. Like if it is toxic to you, you can't undo it. Like if you take a pill and a pill makes you sick, you can stop taking the pill. If you CRISPR yourself and now you've got this gene that's there. There's some techniques people are working on now that make them conditional, where you can turn them on with a pill. So maybe some of that is there, but it's very new but very promising.
So CRISPR would fall under that, right?
It would, yeah.
Okay, So it sounds like an 8.5 on that one. So AI drug discovery, we'll give that one a 10. We already talked about it. Cellular reprogramming, we just talked about that too, right? Creating new stuff. Yeah, that's a
Yeah,
10 too. Yeah.
I think it's a 10 too.
So, all right, go ahead, Matt. I mean, I have some more to go here, but I don't want to just take it all. I don't want to take it all.
What about so I'm a dog owner, for example. Are they also working on longevity in pets?
They are, and it's actually very exciting uh, as a test platform. If you think about like all animals age, so if you want to, do core conserved mechanisms of aging, you could think testing in pets would be a great place to prove your concept that yes, you can extend life. Of course, dogs age at a different rate and they die for different reasons than humans do, so they're maybe not one to one. Um, there's a really good company called Loyal, which is probably the front runner in the dog aging space. And then there's a new cat health company that just is starting up. The challenge I think from your investment thesis perspective is this is all very early, very new, and it's all private. Like I think I was thinking about that of how do we change the game somehow to get more of these things into the public markets faster, where you can, attract more capital into it, maybe have people more flexible in getting in and out. But it's also such a long game that, if you will, the public markets be patient enough to wait 10 or 15 years for the next like real readout of an approved drug.
Point. I've got one.
Go, Jay, please.
So
Please.
you mentioned reproducing different body parts and stuff, and a while back we tied a little bit of that into space tech, being able to 3D print different body parts in zero gravity environment. And is that something that is kind of on the forefront of your perspective on reproducing parts?
Yeah, space manufacturing for biological stuff is pretty interesting. Some even just down to manufacturing specific proteins. Some of them are very difficult to do on Earth, but seem to have been easier in zero gravity. So I think there's potential there. The whole idea of moving things off planet for the benefits of doing things there that you can do that you can't do here. It's a super interesting space, and people are doing it for data centers and nanoparticles and other stuff. I don't see why they wouldn't do it for biological.
What do you think about this GLP-1 ecosystem and all that? How does that affect what's going on around you?
Fascinating story. Some argue that this might be the first like validated anti-aging drug. You think about all of the comorbidities that go along with obesity. That this drug now is showing benefits for cardiovascular and renal and other things, and it shows the massive market potential that can happen when something actually works. So, if you can fix this root cause problem that is really meaningful to a large number of people, people will continue to do it. There's a ton of, now that that's validated, there's a ton of investment. Everybody's now trying to get, ones that don't give you gastrointestinal problems, ones that don't lose muscle mass along with, things that are orally bioavailable instead of having to do an injection every week. So I think there's a ton of next generation that's going to happen there. But I also think it's an interesting cautionary tale on the way pharma thinks and works. They had data over 20 years ago showing the weight loss benefits of these drugs and sat on it because the pharmas didn't think that there was a market for obesity. It's not a disease. You can't get FDA approval for it, or at least couldn't at the time. Nobody was sure how the insurance companies would reimburse it, whether anybody would pay for it. And we're still fighting that fight right now.
Like, if let's say you knew some people that were overweight, would you tell them to take it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, and I think what's interesting is, some people
People
have
you like, that is,
th-
I meant.
yeah, I mean, people have thyroid problems or other
Right.
genetic dispositions. Some people like can try as hard as they want, just aren't going to get skinny. You know, they just are incapable of eating and exercising at a balance that makes them thin. As much as, I like to think, you know, just step up and do the diet and exercise the way you're supposed to, and you'll be fine. I know there are legitimate conditions where people can't. I also think, as a hacker at heart, like if you can understand the system and find an edge that you can exploit to, get it to be the way you want it to be, why wouldn't you do that, right? We should be always looking for what are the new things that we can put into the way people live so that they can live better. And, that's what we're all looking for, right?
Yeah. Okay, so Matt, why don't you pull up his website? He has that cool Muhammad Ali thing. We got to show that anyway. Vincere Biosciences. What's the website exactly? I should know, but I don't. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's vincerebio.com.
Vincere. Oh, I've been saying it wrong the whole
Vincere.
time. Vincere.
Yeah.
Vincere.
Yeah.
My bad. All right.
Yeah. It's Latin for to win.
Oh.
Reminder.
How do I spell it?
Vincere.
Yeah, that last I should be an E in there. VincereBio.com.
V-I-N.
Vincere. Like it. Vincere.
What do we got?
Biosciences. I can't
VIN. Or if you just type in Vincere, VINCERE.
Cere, yeah. There it
There
is.
you go.
Oh, there's my hero. I love that dude. Dude, I love Muhammad Ali.
Yeah, I think he's the perfect hero for us. As he struggled with Parkinson's, was a great fighter. We're in the fight, and I love this quote from him. He who is not courageous enough to take risks will accomplish nothing in
Totally
life.
agree. I love that.
When are you guys going to go public, and are you going to go public through a SPAC?
Right. Matt the SPAC
That's a great
man.
question.
SPAC man Matt
So
asking the questions.
we just did a private capital raise earlier this year and have some good grant funding. So
They have
we're
some real
funded to
guys
get.
backing it, by the way. They have like a long list of good, real people, not like fly-by-night dudes. So you can check out their website, but they got real investors.
Yeah, it's been some good backing. So we're talking about capital markets and whether it makes sense. It's an interesting. My thought has been I want to go into the capital markets when we have a clear line of sight on self-sufficient revenue, right? Which is not the way a lot of biotech companies do it, but I don't want to run negative cash flow for like decades and then have to get acquired. We don't do debt. We just, we find good partners to back what we want to build. We build good things, and then our whole approach is let's go idea to IND, and then we can find a partner that will pay us to take our product through the clinic. I think that's a good way to hedge the downside and continue to reinvest and build growth. So I can see where,
approach.
yeah. I think it's a lot more rational than a lot of biotech companies, and but then again, we bootstrapped the company to our first grant funding, and then brought in investors after that. So, you go about things a little different when it's your own bank account.
All right. So last thing, Matt. So I have your catalyst here is the IND submission for VB23, first in humans. Next catalyst, June 2026. That's the next big one?
It is. That's moving from preclinical to clinical is going to be huge. So that's something we're thinking about, whether it makes sense to do a capital raise, before that, after that, it's usually the timing of doing something. And then, starting to think about it, should the next fundraise be a crossover that then gets us to public markets, or, would it be beneficial to just remain private longer term, which is becoming much more feasible these days.
Right. Well, you've been an amazing, brilliant guy. I mean, if you want to come back in, July 2026 and, tell us how it went, more,
Yeah.
we'll have you back.
Sounds good.
That'd be awesome.
Maybe next time we can talk about what it would take to build a longevity ETF. I'd be curious whether.
I would definitely be. That's definitely interesting. So we're building right now an AI in healthcare ETF, but not longevity. So longevity is something we got to look at.
Yeah, I don't think there are enough companies to do it that are differentiated enough right now to build that bundle.
Probably
But
not yet, but what we like to do is come up with the theme before everyone else instead of jumping on it when it's already out there and hot.
I love that.
Yeah, I mean, it would be interesting, Andy, just from my perspective, all of our perspective. Like, if and when you come back, and let's try to circle back on this. You come back to us with like with some names, because like we've had like space people on and drone people on, and it's kind of we kind of all draw the same conclusion. Like, yeah, this is the coolest stuff, but Anderill's not public yet. SpaceX isn't public yet. Figure AI, did they go public yet or no? I don't think they did. Right? They just
did not.
not yet. So all these guys. They're not public, and I think it's the same way with you, So, yeah, we'd love to hear it.
Yeah, sounds good. Be a good next conversation.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
All
Have a
right,
good day,
now
guys.
Remember, like and subscribe.
Like and subscribe.
Yeah, like and
All right, see you
subscribe.
guys.
Yes.
Thank you. Have a good
All
day.
right,
Thanks for watching. See you guys.
Bye.